What kind of health issues is Qigong good for helping with? That is going to be the topic of this episode of Qi Life. So I move in some different circles of people who, are focused on different things. I've got a few different interests in my life that brings me in contact with lots of different interesting people, which is really nice to get to know different people. And as part of that, of course, a lot of the people who I meet don't really know a lot about Qigong. And so they often ask me questions about it. And even people who do know a little bit about Qigong, often they are only familiar with a small aspect of how Qigong is used. And so often when people ask me about what I do, some interesting different questions come up. And recently I was at a social gathering over the holiday period, and I was talking to someone about Qigong and the topic of how Qigong can be used to help with different health issues came up. And we talked about this in the context of a few different things, both in terms of the clinical practice of Qigong, and then also just Qigong as a practice that people might do for themselves. And I used an analogy to help them to gain some understanding of just how broad the application of Qigong can be in addressing different health issues. And to also put that in context, put that in perspective, because if you've watched the vlog a bit, or if you've read some of my articles or anything like that, you'll know that I'm a strong proponent of being very realistic, very practical about how we approach different things in our lives, including Qigong, so that we can actually get the most benefit from them, but being realistic in our expectations of them. So I thought I would share with you the analogy that I used in talking with him to help to explain just how broadly we can use Qigong in working with different health issues. So the short answer to what kind of different health issues can Qigong help with is absolutely anything. Which, that can sound a little bit extreme without some context, without some perspective on that. Because it's like, wow, Qigong is the solution to everything. If you take a broad enough perspective on what Qigong is, well, maybe possibly that is true. But bringing it down to sort of a more realistic perspective, a more realistic scale and context, will help us to understand a bit about why that's true, that it can help with absolutely any health issue, but maybe what we should expect of that and what that really means. So the analogy that I used was that of diet and nutrition. Because if you think about it, if you think about absolutely any kind of health issue, there's really no health issue that can't be helped or improved in some way with diet and with nutrition. Now, that ranges from just at the very, very baseline, general good health. Having a good diet, good nutrition is going to support general good health. But going beyond that into specific different health issues, you name it, from inflammatory diseases to heart conditions to cancer to anything, you name it. Nutrition can be at least part of helping to address those health issues. Even to take one that people might not think of, well, actually, I'll take two that people might not think of as being directly related to nutrition. If you think of like a broken bone, well, nutrition is quite relevant to that and improving that. One, in terms of, well, what created the conditions where the bone was weak enough that it broke in the first place? So good nutrition can help to avoid that. And then also in ensuring that it heals well, within a suitable time frame and strongly, well, of course, good nutrition is going to help with that too. And there are situations where, sometimes bones just don't heal very well. They take much longer and they don't heal up as strongly and so on. And in those sorts of situations, looking at nutrition is often a really important part of then improving that situation, causing it to heal properly. And this was actually one part of the analogy that I used in this conversation I had at the social gathering. And the person I was talking to was quite surprised about this, because he's like, oh, do bones sometimes not heal? And it's like, yeah, sometimes they don't. And I guess this is one of the things, when you're involved in clinical practice, you come across a lot of the more extreme cases of things, the difficult cases, and so you get to know more of the nuance and details of how things work within our body. And yeah, any kind of health issue, nutrition potentially is going to be helpful and sometimes very important in resolving. To come up with the second one that people may not think of as immediately relating to nutrition, a lot of mental or psychological issues, often there are things going on in the background in relation to nutrition that are contributing to them. And so working with nutrition to make sure that the body, the nervous system, the brain is getting everything that it needs to produce the right hormones, to keep those in balance, to have the right, the right electrical signals functioning the right way, can really, really be really useful, even in addressing psychological issues, not necessarily things that we think of as having so much of a physical base. So yeah, nutrition, everything from just general good health to working quite specifically with specific issues, sometimes making sure that specific nutrients are there in sufficient quantity, or sometimes making sure that someone doesn't have too much of certain nutrients, and so on. I think that is a really good parallel for understanding how Qigong can be really useful for absolutely any type of health condition. Qigong, of course, we work with our mind, our body, and our breath together, and in doing so we tap into the flow of energy through our body and the quality of the energy flowing through our energy systems. Now, that energy is a very real thing. It's not just some esoteric thing. It connects to the functions of our body. A lot of that energy relates to the electrical signals in our nerves, the heat generated by cellular respiration, the physical movement and forces within our body, tensions held in our body, the movement of fluids in our body like blood and lymph and things like this. So when we connect into and become aware of this flow of energy within our body, we're affecting all of these physical functions, which are really important, or actually essential, to our good health. And so working with Qigong helps us to create a healthy, balanced energy flow within our body, which means healthy, balanced physical functions as well. So similar to nutrition, at a base level, well, yeah, practicing Qigong is going to help us to find that balance and have general good health. It can then also be used for any kind of health issue that someone might face as well. Specific health issues, sometimes actually just general Qigong practice will do a lot by improving the general health to improve specific health conditions, but some specific health conditions might require some specific focus to help the energy to flow in a particular way, or to adjust the quality of the energy in a particular way to help to address whatever that issue might be. Now again, that can be anything from inflammatory conditions to digestive problems to broken bones, you name it. There are ways that working with our energy, which then affects the functions of our body, is going to be able to help with whatever the health condition might be. So I think it was a good analogy for helping to explain how broadly Qigong can be applied to different health conditions. I think it's also a good analogy for understanding, or to put some context around some realistic expectations of what we might expect from that too, because as I mentioned before, I'm big on being practical and not on overselling or over expecting too much from different things as well. And in a similar way that we might recognize the value of nutrition in helping with different health issues, we might also recognize that just nutrition by itself may not be the complete solution to a health issue. We might go, yeah, that's going to help, but actually, in many situations, some kind of medication, some kind of physical therapy, some kind of psychological counseling intervention, some kind of even surgery might be really important as well. Nutrition has its role to play, But that doesn't mean that we don't recognize the value and importance of using other therapies and interventions to help to address that health issue. I think it's same with Qigong as well. Sometimes in addressing a specific health problem that you may have, someone may have, just working with Qigong may be enough. It might be, you might actually have everything else you need all sorted out. And the Qigong is sort of the last thing that helps to put it together for you to help to heal your issue. Fantastic. And look, and Qigong can be really powerful in its own right by itself. But at the same time, you know, do all the Qigong you want. If your nutrition, for example, isn't good, you're going to struggle or perhaps even find it impossible to address some sort of health issues. So you still need to look broadly at all the different factors that might be influencing your condition and use all of the relevant useful tools to help to improve it. And so, yeah, I think it's helpful to have that context where Qigong can be used by itself, often to help with different health conditions, but often it might be part of a broader approach. And we can recognize the value in helping and not necessarily think that it's going to fix everything just by itself. It might just be one piece of how you address health issues that you may be facing. Now, in terms of how you get those benefits or how you might work with Qigong to work with health issues that you may have, there are basically two main ways that you might do this. Well, or three main ways, shall we say. One can be simply doing Qigong practices, and pretty much every Qigong practice is going to have a beneficial overall effect on your health, particularly if it's a well-structured, balanced practice of some sort, which is, designed to balance the energy within your system. And you can do this, quite simply just through attending classes and learning different practices and doing them and get a lot of benefit from that. On the other hand, if you have a really specific health issue and maybe it's not getting better from just some general practice and from whatever other things you're doing to improve your health, well, that's where clinical Qigong can come in and be useful. So a skilled clinical Qigong practitioner can then work with Qigong in a couple of ways to help improve health issues. So one is simply in the prescription or the recommendation of specific exercises, specific practices, which are tailored towards the specific issues that you have. So again, this ties in well with that analogy of nutrition, because you can think, yeah, eating a generally healthy diet, hopefully that's not too difficult for most of us in this day and age. Hopefully it's not too hard to get an idea of what a generally healthy diet is from using common sense, from reading some books, from using your own instincts about, like, is this food really healthy or not? And we can get, a generally healthy diet in that way. But sometimes if we have a specific issue, it might pay to actually go and spend some time with someone who has specialized knowledge and can really analyze your situation, what you're eating, to come up with very specific recommendations about what to eat to meet your specific nutritional needs and to address the issue. In a similar way, a clinical Qigong practitioner will often be able to recognize specific Qigong practices that help you in specific ways to balance your energy, to adjust the quality of your energy, to clear blocked energy, and so on, to help with your specific issue you might be dealing with. The other way that a Qigong practitioner may work in addressing health issues is using Qigong directly as a treatment itself. So working directly with the energy to help to clear blocked energy, to help to harmonize and balance the flow of energy within you, adjust the qualities of the energy. So as a direct treatment, which is a little bit different. In terms of health practices, you could compare that to massage, for example, where someone might teach you to massage yourself, or might teach you to do an exercise that you can do for yourself that will work on particular muscles or tissues in your body or something like that. Or they could actually get in there and physically work on those muscles and tissues in order to improve what's going on there, right? And so with Qigong practices, often you're working with yourself to work on the flow of energy and the quality of the energy. Or someone else can directly work on the issue for you to help you with that situation. Even at a more extreme, you could compare it to surgery, which again, that's someone externally coming in, making changes to things inside you to help with the process of healing, hopefully, if the surgery is successful. And some use of Qigong as a treatment can have a stronger role to play, more than just maybe just massage, but something stronger at changing stuff inside your body, inside your energy system, to allow it to heal. I think that's an important thing to also understand when talking about healing and working with health issues, is that ultimately the individual always heals himself. Whatever the external intervention is, whether that be nutrition, whether that be surgery, whether that be medication, whether that be Qigong, it has an effect on the body, on the energy system, of course, but then the true healing comes from the individual and their body, their energy system, then getting in behind whatever treatment has occurred to actually heal, right? To actually integrate, to actually change, to actually maintain changes within the body. And so, yeah, I think it's helpful to understand that too. That applies to every type of healing. Ultimately, the external influence, it has an impact, but the healing is done by the individual. So anyway, hopefully that's useful. Hopefully that gives you some context and perspective on the role that Qigong can play in working with different health issues. It can literally be helpful for any health issue. It's not restricted to just a particular type of health issue, which sometimes people have a tendency to want to, put things in boxes about this is good for this is good for that, things like that. It can literally be helpful for any type of health issue. Now, in terms of the ones that it's going to be most helpful for, I think this is something relevant to discuss as well, because there's lots of different issues that people may face at different times that can be addressed very clearly and directly with a very clear and direct therapy of some sort. So for example, again, nutrition. If someone has a specific deficiency of a specific vitamin or mineral or whatever it might be, well, meeting that deficiency, making sure they eat enough food that can contain that nutrient, or having supplementations, which can be liquids or pills or whatever it might be, to give them enough of what they need, is going to fix it. You don't need anything else, and that's the most straightforward way to address that issue. A classic example of that would be scurvy. This was a big issue for people who used to sail many years ago when they're out at sea for a long time, and over time they'd find they just got really sick and they didn't know what it was. And then someone discovered that just making sure that they had lemons, so they got vitamin C, and there you go, scurvy solved. So often for some health conditions like this, a really clear, simple answer, and it's like, why would you waste your time with anything else? Go for the simple, clear, straightforward solution to that. And that can be across many different things, not just nutrition, even psychologically, if, for example, kind of going to the other end of the spectrum from physical to something that's not quite so physical. Sometimes it's not a matter of there being some other underlying physical thing that's contributing to the psychological issue. It's largely psychological. And so a psychological intervention of some sort, counseling, whatever it may be, boom, that's it, fixes it, solved, awesome. And there's lots of other things as well. But many health issues that we face are more complicated than that. They're actually the result of several different factors combining together to lead to the condition. And these can be trickier to deal with, because if you try to just deal with them physically, well, if there's a big psychological component or even multiple physical components, and you try to just address one physical component, often that's not going to be very effective, because there might be some type of improvement, but then it just goes back to how it was, because the other factors are still creating the situation. Similarly, if you try to address something just psychologically, but there's significant underlying physical things contributing to that issue, well, again, you might get some improvement, but it's really hard to sustain, because the physical factors then just push whoever it is back into the state that they were in previously. And there's lots and lots and lots of different ways that different factors can combine together like this, right? And this is what makes it so interesting, often working with different health issues, is the way all of these come together. And one of the things that's really powerful about using Qigong is, of course, because it works with both the mind and the body, to work with the energy. The energy really sits at the intersection between the mind and the body. The energy flows quite literally, physically through our body, but the mind has this powerful role in directing it. That when we work directly with the energy, we're often actually creating changes in both the mind and the body at the same time. And also not just in one physical aspect, but maybe multiple physical aspects, because in order to change the energy flow, multiple physical things may need to change as well. And so we're working at the real functional level of what's going on within the system. Often working in this way can create effective change in conditions that have proved difficult to address in other ways. Just using simple direct therapies of one sort or another. Working in this way, which works more collectively with the systems of the body and the energy system, can be really useful. And so I think that's where Qigong really stands out as a therapy, as a way of working with health issues, is working with some of these more tricky things. Look, Qigong can be helpful just for direct things as well, of course, in different ways. But that's where it stands out, where it has maybe an advantage over some other forms of treatment, is working in some of these tricky things that sit in between and are affecting multiple systems. And of course, another really good thing about Qigong practice is that it can do so much more than just work with health issues. Often people come to Qigong because they're wanting to work on their health. And this applies both to just doing the practices for themselves, or trying to use Qigong as a form of treatment. They've tried lots of different things, and they like, okay, I really want to improve whatever's going on, and this brings them to Qigong. But it could be so much more than that. It's not just about developing health. That's kind of a baseline. It's a really important baseline to have health, because there's that saying, basically, without your health, everything else is more challenging in your life. But once that's achieved, historically, Qigong was applied to lots of other things as well, grouping them into three main areas. One of those was health, both in terms of healing disease and just generating good health, maintaining good health. That was one of the primary applications of Qigong. But the other two, one was the martial arts. It was used a lot within the martial arts for developing not just health, but extraordinary levels of performance, peak performance. And sometimes not just to the martial arts, but other areas where it's like, no, we're going beyond just healthy to extraordinary ability. The other area that it was applied to was to the more philosophical or the spiritual aspects of things. Quite a number of different spiritual traditions use Qigong as part of their practices because of the benefits it yielded in terms of developing awareness, developing an understanding of the interconnectedness between ourselves and the world around us, which then contributed to the understanding and enlightenment that people sought within these spiritual paths. So much that we can get from our Qigong practice. Health being just one part of that, which of course, really, really, really important thing for us to have. For myself, at the moment, my time is very much focused on teaching, and has been for some time, with the courses that I run, the teacher training courses, helping other people to teach even more people Qigong, to spread the benefits of it. And so I haven't done much clinical Qigong practice lately. Certainly, I really enjoy hearing stories about how people's health has improved from the teaching that I've done, as they've learnt the practices, how it's made a difference to different health issues that they have. And then also from people who've learnt from me and taught others, and how that has helped with people's health. Fantastic. It's a different level of functioning to then work in a clinical setting. And there's a whole range of benefits that come from that, and I miss that in some ways. I guess a big part of that is that I like helping people. Of course, I think most people like helping people, but it's really satisfying to see positive changes in people's lives, to help them in that way, to ease their suffering, I guess, and then see them go on to live in a richer, more fulfilling way. Some other really interesting things that come out of clinical practice of Qigong is just learning and understanding, actually. Because as I mentioned earlier, when you're in clinical practice, you get to see, you get to see difficult stuff, right? Not just the normal, but the people who have more fringe border cases of what's going on with them. And as part of that, you gain some rich insights into how things work in the mind, the body, and the energy, and that's fascinating. It means that there's always something new, because people are all different. Their experience in life is different. Yeah, there's some broad patterns, and so there's going to be a lot of things that are similar. But if you work with enough people, you're always going to come across something new, and that leads to some new insights as well. So in some ways, I miss that. It's just not the time right now for me to do a lot of that. I do from time to time do a little bit to help someone out. You know, if someone's got a particular problem and I say, yeah, sure, okay, I'll help you out with that. But my time is really taken up with the teaching and all that goes with that. But I think at some point in the future, you know, times and seasons, there will be a time for me to get back into that at some point in the future and do more clinical work. One of the things I'm also really looking forward to is actually teaching other people how to use Qigong in a clinical setting for direct healing. And so that's something I'm looking forward to as well. It's something that has been on the cards, has been planned for quite some time. Still working with some of the other courses at the moment, but in due course I'll be offering some training in that area as well, because it really is such a useful approach to healing, and you know, fascinating for people to learn for their own understanding, you know, how it works, but then the benefit that those people then can give to other people by offering that Qigong healing can have a really significant impact. Because again, working with the Qigong and working with the energy in that direct way, it can often help people with some things that are just hard to address in other ways as well. So that's something I'm looking forward to as well, possibly later this year. We'll see. I've got a lot to get through in terms of some of the other courses that I'm working on and running, but possibly later this year it's possible that might start offering that as well. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed, if you've made it all the way through to this point in the video, you probably have enjoyed the vlog. It's been a bit of a long rambly one, I think. But if you have liked it, please comment, subscribe, share, all those good things, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one soon.